In the course of rock and roll history, we have lost way too many musicians way too early in their lives. Guys like Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and Kurt Cobain come to mind. But at least with most of these guys, they were around long enough that we got to hear a significant body of their work. We got to hear a lot of their musical ideas before they were taken too early. This is where the death of Randy was particularly tragic for me, because he went so early on in his career. There was so much more left that we could have heard of his, and it's one of those guys where I really wished I could have heard 8, 9, 10 more albums of his ideas and what he would have done in the future. And even so, his influence on generations of guitarists that came after him is still huge. And today we're going to look at 5 of the things that he did. We'll call them his top 5 habits that you can incorporate into your own style and find a way to use. And welcome to Music with Marky. Before neoclassical was a thing and players came along like Yngwie Malmsteen, Paul Gilbert, and Vinnie Moore, you had Randy Rhoads and also, of course, to some extent, Ritchie Blackmore, who were kind of bringing that classical thing into modern rock and metal music. Randy came from a musical family and he had classical training at a very young age. I think I read that he started at the age of 7, and eventually he was teaching himself in his hometown and joined a little band called Quiet Riot. And by the time he got to join Ozzy Osbourne's band, the music he was writing and playing was full of influences from his classical training, and it wasn't the type of thing you were hearing from metal bands at that time. Most of those bands were leaning heavily on blues influences, especially the bands that came over from England to America, that whole British invasion. They were very much rooted in American blues and turning those into rock songs. Now, Randy wasn't adverse to using blues influences either, and actually the second one of my 5 Randy habits really does kind of lean on more of a blues thing. So before we get into those, let's see if I can stuff those 5 habits into about 40 seconds worth of music. So the first thing you see me using in the example song here is using triads, more like acoustic type of chords, in places where you would normally play power chords. Now, of course, that's something you can see in Randy's iconic tune with Ozzy, Crazy Train, in the verse. He's playing there the kind of triads you would normally think of, not with distortion like I'm playing with here, but you play clean. And when I learned that part, it took me out of just playing basic power chords all the time and thinking about how I could put voicings in. What would have been just a basic F sharp to an A to a B, I incorporated a triad over it similar to that from Crazy Train, where I'm up here on the D, G, and B strings, and I've got like a B minor 7 triad, but with the F sharp in the bass. Then the basic A major. Then back to that minor 7 triad and E minor 7 with a B in the bass. And you can do this all over the place, taking even just like a basic 1-4-5 if you have maybe an A. If you want to make that more interesting and not just plunk along on the power chords, think about the voicings you can use. I'll do it in minor instead of major. So I have like the minor 7 here, like I used in my song. Then I go up to the D, maybe I'll have my pinky, it's a minor 7 sus4. Then back to the minor 7. It just makes things more interesting. You're looking for voicings that you normally wouldn't do on a heavy part. Maybe you would only do with an acoustic, like I said. And that's the first thing that Randy opened my eyes to. Let's look at the second thing now. This thing you saw at the end of each one of my rhythm phrases, and that is where I was thinking more, this is what I was saying, he had like kind of a blues thing in here as well. Blues players do a lot of things where they sing for 3 measures of a 4-measure beat or 7 of 8, and then play a fill at the end of it, a lot like a drummer would think, where it's the beat, a fill, a beat, the fill. And so I had the rhythm part. And then instead of just playing a D chord, I did the fill. And on the next one, when I got down to the fill, I had that dyad fill, which is similar to what he does in Mr. Crowley. And so the idea of thinking of like a drummer and a blues player putting a fill at the end of phrases, especially when there's no vocals there, and also the dyad fills. So it's kind of a combined tip. This is the second thing that I got from Randy. Let's look at the 3 lead tips now. Now the third thing I got from Randy, which is the first of the lead technique things, is to incorporate trills. It's a very classical type of technique, and he would use them moving horizontally up and down the neck, which is what I did in the example here, where I took something that you either would have built up a scale or maybe a rhythmic kind of part, or I may have gone, and I replaced it with that very classical trill, and worked my way up from the position I was in down here on the 5th fret up back into the kind of F-sharp pentatonic box. So it's a very good and useful technique if you want to move up and down between positions on the neck that you're comfortable playing in. It's another way you can do that. Now, speaking of moving horizontally, another way that Randy liked to do that, again, was quite classical, which was to employ chromatics rather than moving always diatonically through the scale. So whereas I wanted to get from the F-sharp pentatonic spot I was in here down to the F-sharp chord over here where I play in the other position, instead of moving diatonically through the scale, I did this fancy trick thing where I barred over here on the 7th fret and I played and went down one step at a time. It takes you outside the scale and has a neat kind of falling over itself type of quality. And that was a fancy way to do it. You could do it with a simple, which is something that he would do as well and at all different tempos. So not being afraid to use chromatics, that would be my 4th tip from Randy that is useful all over the place in your playing. And my 5th tip, again, very particularly from the classical world, is to make use of diminished scales, and in particular, diminished triads in place of basic minor scales or minor arpeggios. Here I did it at the very end of the solo with that build-up. I played an F-sharp diminished arpeggio, a triad here. Something I've been doing for years ever since I saw him do it. And you can do these things in reverse too. It's got a very horror music kind of feel to it, and I kind of go in depth with the diminished scale in different videos, so I'll link that up here. So we're not going to do a whole lesson on that here. I just wanted to make you aware of it and maybe check that out and learn some diminished stuff yourself and incorporate it in your playing. And so hopefully these 5 things that I got from Randy and incorporated into my own rock and metal playing are things that you too find extremely useful and can expound on the way I did and turn them into things that are your own style, not just a rip-off of Randy Rhoads, which is what this whole series is about. And so I'm posting this video on Randy's birthday, and if he was around today, I wish I could call him up and wish him happy birthday or something, but hopefully wherever he is, he's making music with all the greats out there and having a great time. And hopefully you guys got something out of this lesson. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I get back to everybody as soon as I can. And until next time, keep making great music.
Hey friends, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. It makes the whole world better.